Disneyland was not like anywhere else on Earth. My parents would save all year long, and we had one yearly trip to the park. You had to have the Peter Pan hat with the feather. We would go in and we'd, have our little bit of money. I mean, it was magic from the minute you got onto the tram. It was just happy. When I started working at the park, the employees were so happy to be there. You were proud to be a part of this magnificent place. And they were proud of you. That's year one. Everybody's always thrilled to get that. That's Steamboat Willie.
Vanna White it.
Second one is 5 years, 10 years, to 20, and 40. Financially, they're not worth anything. They're just little pieces of pot metal. But when you've earned them, when you've worked hard and you've given all those years to a company to be recognized, with that, it really means a lot. And it means that the company appreciated you. Or at least it did.
Growing up, Disneyland was like a home away from home for my family. That's me and my brand new red coat. We called Disneyland the park. We went to the park all the time to see my grandpa, Roy Disney, who, along with his brother, started the Walt Disney Company almost a century ago. They were kind of like Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket, sort of id and superego. Walt would go off and do some crazy thing, and then Roy would figure out where the money was going to come from. I'm really proud of what my grandfather and great-uncle did. They brought so much joy into the world. I was raised on their story. It was a story about bootstraps, about rags to riches, about the American dream.
Dad, somebody told me, I heard one time that you have made $1 a day for a long time. And you support the family on $1 a day.
Was $1 a day, $7 a week.
By mid-century, their enterprise would help create the largest middle class the world had ever seen. Only later would I come to see that there was so much more to the story. When you're a little kid, you can't really understand that you're growing up in something at all unusual or unfair. The only metaphor I can think of is if you're a goldfish, you don't really know how to describe water. But then one day, you realize your family is a very big and complicated deal. And you get trained from childhood not to speak badly ever in public about the family or the business. And I didn't, for a long time.
We're delighted to welcome producer, philanthropist, and social activist, Abigail Disney.
You compare the dynamics of wealth to that of addiction.
I'm sorry, this is radical. Too much money. There is such a thing. If you have $1 billion and you want to send your kid to school, congratulations, you can send him to school for 20,000 years.
Abigail, why do you want to pay more taxes?
We do not have a society structured around fairness right now, and the proof is in the pudding.
Having the last name Disney is like having a weird superpower you didn't ask for. For years, I've tried to do my best with it. But I have to confess, even though I knew things were far from perfect at the family business, it's always felt so impossible to speak out because of the inevitable repercussions. My dad went to battle over the direction of the company twice. And I saw the way he got threatened with lawsuits and torn to shreds in the media. Anybody would think twice about getting involved. But then one day, out of the blue, I got a message from a guy named Ralph, who worked at Disneyland. He told me that he and his fellow cast members, as Disney calls them, were fighting for better pay, and he asked me for my help. Even though I have no role at the company, I felt like I had to go to Anaheim.
Up, there she goes.
Go play. Ready? Set. No, I didn't say go! You cheat. Opal, come on over.
Are you having fun yet?
Come on. Turn around.
What?
Turn around.
Oh,
Now you
there we
two-
go.
You two can race.
Somebody's a princess, you told me. Who's the princess?
They're all three
They're all
princesses.
three
They're all,
princesses.
oh, okay, okay.
We have McAllen is the one that is the princess of all the lands.
Michaela, our 6-year-old, she is the princess of the sky. And then McAllen, our youngest, and she's the mermaid
And
princess.
she's the princess of all the seas.
Oh,
Yes.
that's, you've divided it up nicely.
Yes.
You guys met at Disney?
Yes.
Yes.
Each other?
He saw me in the parking lot, and I said, do you want to eat inside the park or outside the park? He said, inside the park. And we've been together ever since.
So it was an inside the park home run.
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
Go, Kenzie.
Do you see your daughter?
Go.
At the time when we first met, I had this idea that we would move out and have our family and everything. Unfortunately, the economy does not allow that. We live with my mother-in-law. We're lucky enough to do that.
I've always wanted to have a house of my own, always dreamed of one. But I would settle even to have an apartment. It would be nice to just have it where I can show my kids that I can do things on my own and not have to rely on my parents.
You want Mommy to come down with you?
Even with both of us working full-time, we still fall below poverty level.
We try to do as much as we can that doesn't require any kind of money. We make $15 an hour. And for people who work at night, we only get 75 cents an hour extra. But for working the hours we work with the lack of sleep, I don't think 75 cents is enough.
Third shift starts 11:30 to about 8 o'clock in the morning. It's very physical work. We're the people who do the pixie dust at night. You scrub the kitchens, the floor, the toilets. And I'm proud of what I do. I'm very proud of it. And that type of thing you'll find throughout all the parks. The people who tend to work there want to provide the best.
I go in to work every day because this is a place where magic is made, you know? We don't want those memories of the first time we were at Disney when we were 10 years old and the walking down Main Street and it feeling just such incredible joy and magic. You don't want that to not exist.
For the first time in over 60 years, the union started talking and we all found out that we were all struggling with basically the same issues.
Thing. Right.
None of us were ever supposed to talk about how much money we made. I worked 2 jobs for 8 years to make ends meet.
Yeah, like, I myself am actually a student. It's really expensive. I want to be a teacher, but I have 2 jobs. I don't just work at Disney, I also work at Knott's Berry Farm. Nice. And I work for the mouse and the dog. Disney is an industry leader in terms of like theme parks, right? And the same things that are happening at Disney are also happening at Knott's Berry Farm.
We've had cast members that have to make a decision between medication or food. And these are essential things that you can't make choices like that.
By a show of hands, how many of you have someone you know that works at Disney that's on food stamps? Wow. How many of you know somebody who works at Disney who's slept in their car in the last couple of years? How many of you know somebody who have gone without medical care because they can't afford it?
I do.
How many of you all have children?
I am somebody who doesn't have kids. I don't have the finances to take care of a child in the way that I would like to. It's affected my ability to family plan and to look towards my future as far as my personal life. And it's not, you know, this is not where I thought I'd be at 33.
Don't cry, baby.
Aww.
For me, you can borrow our kids.
Yeah. Everybody thinks that we can all just bootstrap it and move up. If you're doing that job to the best of your ability, it should be treated like a proper job. I think I should be able to pay my bills on my custodial job. But, you know, I've always had somewhat unstable housing. I ended up living in my van for a few months. Right now, I'm renting a room from a friend, but she's planning to retire. So I don't know what my housing situation's gonna look like. I look at the housing nearby, and it's very much out of my price range. A studio apartment would take like 80% of my take-home pay a month, and like a 1-bedroom apartment would be more than I make in a month. I am not finding anything in the Anaheim, Orange County area that's in my price range. I don't want anybody to have to deal with the same stress that I deal with, and I know everybody around me does. And that's why I started getting more involved with the union. My coworkers are my family.
So I don't know about you, brothers and sisters, but I'm ready to fight. Are you ready to fight?
Yes! Show them what democracy looks like! This is what democracy looks like! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace!
I am 26 years old. I do school part-time and I do work part-time. For the longest time, I did feel kind of like a failure, to be quite honest. I thought that by now I would have moved out from my parents' house. But now it's a little more like anger, because I realize it's not just me, it's like so many of us.
In 2018, all the unions at Disneyland organized a campaign to do battle with the company over the wages and working conditions. Disney was under an enormous amount of public pressure, and so they reluctantly agreed to adopt a $15 minimum wage. But most experts say that a living wage in Anaheim is closer to $24 an hour. And so the unions felt that they were being, can I say screwed?
Yeah.
Okay. And so the unions and the employees at Disneyland asked me and my colleague to do a survey. We were shocked by what we found. 1 out of every 10 full-time workers was homeless at some point in the previous 2 years, and 2/3 didn't have enough money to pay for food. At the same time, in 2018, Disney's CEO Bob Iger made $65 million in 1 year.
Iger's package was 1,424 times the median salary of a Disney employee.
That's 2,000 times the salary of a custodian. In other words, a custodian would have to work for 2,000 years to make what Bob Iger makes in 1.
The Disney company is ground zero of the widening inequality in America. But there's a myth that Disney's prosperity will trickle down to ordinary people. The city council and the mayor of Anaheim have believed that if Disneyland does well, then Anaheim does well.
Anaheim's a tale of two cities. You have the resort district. This is where Disneyland's at. This is where the stadium is at. Then you get the south part of the town. You have many of the working class communities. When you go around through the streets, you see infrastructure that's not updated. You know, you see gang problems. When we first started covering Anaheim for Voice of OC, the big argument was that all of the money in Anaheim was spent on the northern part of the town. The south part of the town does not get the investment. The only investment it gets is police.
One of the things for me in being on council is how quickly I learned about focuses so much on tourism and making sure that the children of the tourists are happy, right? In the happiest place on earth, and they forget about, or don't even consider, they're just indifferent to the lives of the actual children who live in Anaheim.
We've seen a void in policies that really are centered around people and the lives that they lead here in Anaheim versus policies that continue to give tax breaks and more money to those who already have much.
So tell us the legend of the parking lot, because it's crazy to me.
Yeah, so in 1996, the city took out a $500 million bond. Part of that bond was to build a parking lot for the Disney resort. The city then leased it to Disney for $1 a year. Disney would keep all of the revenue, all of the revenue. If they fill up 300 days a year, it's 10,000 cars, $25 a car, that's $65 million in pure revenue.
So basically, it's a business that they spent no capital creating.
Correct. The corporation should not be looking to get public dollars to do its private business, to grow its business. It's not a startup company. And even then, Walt Disney didn't ask for public dollars when he was starting up.
And yet, in the 2 decades leading up to 2018, Disney had gotten the city of Anaheim to cough up $1 billion in the form of subsidies and tax breaks.
These deals moved through without a lot of opposition, without a lot of debate. You know, there's dark money of Disney influencing through a series of resort-related pacts and controlling governance of the city council. So here's a story from about 4 years ago. For another meeting that went into the wee hours, the Anaheim City Council narrowly approves a tax shield for Disneyland that effectively strips residents of their power to tax admission to the mega resort for up to 45 years.
So they were protected against a tax that didn't exist yet. They were protected against the idea of a tax for 45 years.
Yeah, exactly right.
Everything Disney was doing, from skirting taxes to stiffing workers, was happening at almost every big company in America. I came home to my privileged life feeling complicit. Everything I had came from inheriting company shares. I had no role or influence at Disney, and no idea where to start if I wanted to make a difference. My father always told me, first, you try quietly. I knew it would go nowhere, but I thought I owed Bob Iger at least the courtesy of an email. So that's where I started. Dear Bob, there's a painful irony in the idea that someone working at the happiest place on earth is sleeping in his car. These issues are real and painful and don't represent who Disney is as a company and who you are as a man. What if Disney chose to pay people well and give them job security? What if you chose to lead?
Is there a way to like sit with Bob and talk about it? Do you think?
I don't think Bob's gonna meet with you, honey.
Yeah, I figured this.
Even if I asked him.
Yeah.
And he likes me.
Yeah.
No, he's not gonna meet with you. I always knew him to be a good guy, but he just needs to kind of wake up.
Yeah.
Smell the roses, and yes, I'll probably not stay friends with him if he ever hears me say that.
My issue is not that he's not a nice person.
Right.
My issue is that nice isn't enough,
Mhm.
you know? And you know, honestly, it's not all Bob's fault. He's just
It's
doing
a
what Wall
culture.
Street tells him to
It's
do.
a culture that's wrong.
You know,
everywhere.
and if tomorrow he went out and said, give everybody $24 an hour, the share price would plummet. You know, he'd get punished for it. He'd lose his job. So it's not exactly one CEO or, this is a culture-wide thing.
Well, Bob can rationalize it because he's brought so much value to the company in the sense of
And no
stockholder
question.
value, and we have benefited from
Yeah.
that. And they pay dividends
Yeah.
out, and we benefit from that.
Yeah.
But it's prioritizing the wrong thing. It's not prioritizing people,
Yeah.
and that's the core problem right there. It's Grandpa.
Yeah. You know, Grandma told me I was his favorite. Did you ever hear that?
That's just not true. There's no way that's true, because I thought I was his favorite.
It's just hard for me to imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I cannot see him taking $66 million home for a year's work in the same year when at the same company people can't afford food. I don't see that happening.
That would never have happened. That would never have happened. It was a different time. Now it's about money. Greed is good.
Greed is good.
Yeah.
I mean, Ayn Rand was one of the people who kind of came up with the idea that greed was good.
Mm-hmm.
And she was seen as a fruitcake, a nut, an outlier.
Well, maybe that's how they look at you, honey.
When Bob Iger wrote back, he acknowledged the problems his workers were having. But he suggested that the government was failing them and that simply increasing their pay wouldn't solve their problems. He referred me to the head of HR, who told me about the company's free education program, which is nice, but it doesn't pay the rent. It was exasperating.
What's up?
Iger put me in touch with the head of HR there, and she's very nice and very helpful. And I don't know if they don't understand what I'm getting at or if they don't want to understand what I'm getting at. But it was clear I wasn't getting anywhere. So I don't know what direction this is going to go in.
So you want higher taxes?
I do. I think that at least the wealthy need to be
And what does
paying
that
higher
mean to
taxes.
you when you say higher taxes?
So after months of feeling paralyzed, there I was doing a live segment about taxing the rich when I got an unexpected question.
And then the other question I was going to ask you is there's a Disney shareholder meeting today, as it happens.
Yes.
Do you think that Bob Iger's overpaid?
I think
You
that
know him.
CEOs in general are
I imagine
paid
you have a lot of Disney
far too
stock,
much.
right?
I'm not going to come out and say that. But I will say that if your CEO salary is at the 700, 600, 500 times your median workers paid, then there is nobody on earth. Jesus Christ himself isn't worth 500 times his median workers
So what
paid.
would Walt Disney think of this?
Clearly, I'd struck a nerve.
She dove deeper into her remarks Sunday and in nearly 24 tweets.
Abigail Disney wrote, "It's time to call out Disney and anyone else rich off their workers' backs."
Disney is testifying before Congress today over CEO pay.
This topic of income inequality is really heating up on Capitol Hill.
My mother's voice is working overtime right now, telling me to sit up straight and asking me who I think I am. It's sort of like you need to feel awful about what you're doing, but if you're going to feel awful about what you're doing, you should at least sit up straight. I'm so nervous here.
What?
I'm so nervous right now.
I know. Breathe.
Did I ever show you this ring? Do you know what it is?
No. Oh, it's bananas. No?
No.
What is it?
It's a clitoris.
It's a clitoris.
I gotta tell you, when I wear this, it's always the men who say, "Wow, that's a beautiful ring."
That's deeply disturbing.
I just love it. It's I like to wear it to the most patriarchal places.
And point it right at him.
Yeah. Fight the power.
It did look like bananas at first.
Thank you so much.
You're nubbin.
Okay, thank you. Here we go, girls.
All right.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
We'll call the PDC.
The committee will come to order. The hearing is entitled Promoting Economic Growth, a review of proposals to strengthen the rights and protections of workers. And I now recognize the
Madam Chair, I have a parliamentarian inquiry.
Okay.
I'd like to know the purpose of the filming. It's highly unusual. Is this a for-profit or not-for-profit entity?
It might be a for-profit entity, but I've certainly never seen a profit on any of it. But
reclaiming my time, I don't believe this is a. I don't believe.
The objections to my having a film crew present came seemingly out of the blue, though I would later learn that a Disney lobbyist had been working behind the scenes, pressuring both sides to prevent me from speaking.
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor of the move to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
In the opinion of the chair, the nays have it. Dr. Disney, you are now recognized.
Thank you. Today, I hope to raise some simple questions about CEO compensation. Does a CEO's pay have any relationship to what his hotel maids and janitors get? Do the people who spend a lifetime at the lowest end of the wage spectrum deserve the dignity of a living wage? This is a moral issue. The burden is not just on Disney, and Disney is a long way from being the worst offender. Disney could tomorrow raise the salaries of all of its workers to a living wage,
It was possible to do this when my great uncle and grandfather built the company. It's possible now. People made this problem, and by people, it can be fixed. Thank you.
The gentleman from Indiana is now recognized.
Well, Dr. Disney, I heard you several times say what CEO pay should be, what living wage should be, up and down the spectrum, C to shining C. That is, we have a definition of that. That is socialism.
Here we go.
We know what that is.
This idea that a company exists solely to maximize profits. That is simply not true. Companies have moral obligations to their employees.
If you don't want to call this socialism, I suppose you can call it Marxism, neo-Marxism. It certainly isn't the path that made our country the world's land of opportunity. The reality is the entire American workforce is benefiting from this era of prosperity.
Where do you want the yellow onions?
Oh, right next to the red. We got up at 4 o'clock this morning. I haven't been feeling good, and Ralph was up for over 24 hours. He worked the night before. He got off work and he went over to the food bank. Sometimes we feel like we miss our kids, whatnot. But at the same time, we also want our kids to know exactly with what it's like to give. Here, Ellie.
We have one more over there.
I'm going to hand you the stuff over here. Okay, sounds good. Did you wash the apples?
See.
Thank you.
Snow White, I always wash the apples.
No, you don't.
The Disney company did respond to Abigail Disney.
Disney fired back with their own statement,
saying your statements are, quote, unfair and libelous.
We strongly disagree with this characterization of our employees and their experience at Disney.
My colleague asked Bob Iger about that massive pay gap, and he said it's not an issue I want to address, but believes the interests of the employees have been served, quote, very well.
January, February, March, we'll be having this once a month.
To be clear, 2019 was one of Disney's most profitable years ever, as it was for many American companies. And yet, food banks across the country were struggling to keep up with demand. The business narrative had come totally unmoored from reality.
Abigail Disney, she's missing the big story, Liz, which is we are reducing income inequality through free market capitalism and through the tax cuts, more investment by businesses, a tight labor market. That's the best thing you can do for, working class Americans, because we all want Americans to climb the economic ladder.
So let me ask you about this. Okay, here I am hacking away at trying to make a difference at this company, partly because I think Disney's like a bellwether company. Their power is so immense, but they're being stalled by fear and conformity and greed. I mean, am I wrong about that? If they change, there will be those that follow behind?
You're going to need Disney, but you're going to need one or two other companies
of
people running them with a conscience. But you've got to get that first cog moved.
Yeah, exactly. So what's the strategy? What am I missing? What do I need to do?
Make a movie about it?
There's that.
Well, that was meta. But I did grow up steeped in the power of stories to change the world. My family is itself a story. One that's invoked constantly as the embodiment of the American dream. But an unexamined story is a dangerous thing. That American story about rising on your own teaches us all to believe that if you work hard enough, anything is possible. Climbing the economic ladder. It's as if race doesn't matter, gender, disability, or anything else. It's magical thinking, and you can hear it in the language we use. Shooting the moon, reaching for the brass ring, pulling on your own bootstraps. I mean, think about it. You can't pick yourself up by anything on yourself. It's physics. But the language is always about rising. Rising on your own. My grandfather and great-uncle did not rise alone. In the 50s, 60s, and 70s, a full-time worker at Disneyland could afford a modest middle-class life. A house, food in the fridge, a car, and the ability to raise a family.
I never intended to make a career out of Disney. Never. It was a summer job. But you could advance in the company. If they realized that you were really happy there and worked well, then you got quite the raise. Because I remember all of a sudden I was making pretty good money. Roy talked about how he hoped that some of us would go on to stay with the company. And he meant it.
Roy Disney, we call him Roy. And they'll correct you every time if you call him Mr. Disney or Mr. Tatum. And doesn't that make you feel good? It does me.
I remember him as a pretty regular guy who lived a no-frills lifestyle by today's CEO standards. In fact, in 1967, his pay, including stock options, was just 78 times his lowest worker's pay, which was typical for a CEO of his time. So, what was different then?
Why didn't executives in the 1950s and 60s give themselves the kind of tremendous salaries and bonuses and stock options and everything? You just didn't do it. There was a certain ethics. There was a certain way you behave.
Is it overly romantic for me to think of my grandfather as someone who, thought about his employees as important partners and wanted to make sure that people could raise families on their salaries?
I don't think it's overly romantic at all. The motto of the Harvard Business School used to be, making a decent profit decently.
Really?
Yeah. And that wasn't that unusual. It wasn't a crazy idea that business was in service to society.
So the economic situation we're currently in, I think a lot of people assume is just what happens, right?
Yeah, people think the economy is like the weather. The economy is not the weather. It's not a set of uncontrollable forces that we just have to sort of try to protect ourselves from as much as possible. People set the rules for capitalism.
Greed's been with us forever, and there have always been businessmen setting the rules to favor themselves. So what was holding them back?
In the middle of the 20th century, norms and laws set a different standard and understanding in terms of what Americans expected. That basically was a social contract between business, government, and labor that said, you know what, we're all gonna do our part to ensure that we all have a pretty decent standard of living. And you had really strong labor unions that gave workers a real voice in the conditions of their work and of the business practices and business strategies.
It wasn't just the generosity of the CEOs that made capitalism a little more humane. It was that the labor movement fought a fight, and the government backed them up with worker laws, workers' rights laws.
Those laws, in addition to mid-century norms, are what kept my grandfather and other CEOs in check. I remember talk around the dinner table about the notorious strike way back in 1941 when nearly every worker walked off the job to protest unfair pay. Grandpa and Uncle Walt didn't like being told what to do by anyone, but they didn't have a choice.
Walt did everything he possibly could, but unions were incredibly powerful. And so Walt Disney had to capitulate.
In terms of how employees were treated more often and how companies did not feel required to take out every last possible penny like Scrooge, it was different. You know, in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, tax rates on corporations were high, higher than they've been in 50 years. And yet it worked out. It built up all kinds of things. The interstate highways, they were brand new and they were wonderful. It was fantastic. And of course, it funneled all those hundreds of thousands and millions of people to Disneyland.
This is Disneyland. Since its opening, 50 million people, or over 1/4 of America's population, have come here. And in 10 years, almost $1 billion have been spent, all because of tourist money generated by a unique recreation industry in this vast Orange County area.
It sure seemed like money was trickling down then, even as companies were making profits and the economy was going gangbusters.
You had the big hallmarks we think of as middle-class life, paid for by tax dollars. Things like massively subsidized housing, the ability for someone on a working class income to get into home ownership without a down payment. And the government subsidized health care, free college. It was the creation of the greatest middle class the world had ever seen, the highest standard of living in the world. The American dream was a gift of the American government. But it was largely for whites only.
So everything about the collective social contract that built what we call the middle class in the United States was racialized.
Yes.
Like so many white people, growing up, I hadn't been taught that government policies had actively stacked the deck against people of color by limiting access to all those on-ramps to the American dream.
In the United States, we so often don't want to see the harm, the exploitation, the power. That's the Disneyfication of American history and of our American story.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome. Disneyland is your land. And there's Aunt Jemima.
It's painful, and it took me a long time to fully comprehend the role that my family, the people that I loved, played in perpetuating centuries-old myths and stories that made this racist system seem perfectly natural and completely benign.
You know, our original economic model in this country was stolen land, stolen people, and stolen labor. It's an economy in which white men are sitting at the top of a hierarchy. That's really our founding myth. The idea that some people and groups of people are simply better than others.
Here I am down here on Main Street. I got my whole family with me, my lovely wife, Mary, and my daughter, Melinda, and Bob. You know, this is a Main Street, ladies and gentlemen, just like my grandma used to tell me about back in Joplin, Missouri.
When he created those amusement parks, Walt Disney created not only a false reality, but he also changed reality itself. As Disneyland was being built, Walt was very conscious of creating that berm around the park. And the idea of creating that berm was that reality was out there, and it didn't invade here.
But outside the berm, it was getting harder and harder to ignore reality.
People of color were suddenly saying, we want a seat at the table. We've been contributing to this great American engine of prosperity, and we want our shot, too. When the civil rights movement and the gains in the courts empowered Black Americans, the federal government switched from being the enforcer of the racial hierarchy to the upender of the racial hierarchy. And millions of Americans, white Americans who had been taught to disdain and distrust Black Americans, felt betrayed by that government.
The sense of betrayal white Americans felt planted a deep seed of mistrust in the government, which would only expand across the political spectrum as unrest continued into the 1970s.
All kinds of people weren't so crazy about the government for a lot of reasons. There was all this talk of revolution and socialism and everything else. Many CEOs and rich people who wanted to maximize their wealth and power thought, like, my God, are the guillotines going to come for us? Some of them thought that. And they thought, we're going to get together and stop this or we're going to be washed away. And the anti-business sentiment is just going to ruin us.
The business class may have been fearful, but in all this upheaval, they saw an opportunity to use white fear and insecurity to sell a new economic story.
They began to see that white Americans would turn away from government and unions and towards the quote-unquote free market. And that's when we began to see the business class really organize with a message that said, basically, turn your back on the formula that created your own middle-class prosperity. And what we see today is we have an economy that always existed for Black and brown people, and yet now is existing for nearly the majority of American workers. If you build into any system a belief in a hierarchy of human value that gives permission to exploitation of anyone, ultimately that system will sort of swallow us all.
All across America, tourist attractions are shutting down. Disneyland in California closing because of the coronavirus.
They are proceeding with the closure of these parks.
Here's what's new at 2:05. Disney will furlough 30,000 of its workers in Anaheim alone, an additional 43,000 in its parks.
What the company is asking them to do is to certainly apply for state benefits in the interim.
With no clarity about whether or when permanent layoffs would come, cast members wondered how long their unemployment benefits would hold out.
To try and keep things fun and interesting, we are in our tent camping in the front yard.
It's cold.
It can't be cold, honey. Mommy just got it off the grill.
It is cold. Feel it.
Okay, I'll find a way to heat it back up.
How dare you? How dare you? How dare you?
It's raining.
You like camping, huh?
Mm-hmm. In the rain.
In the rain.
I like it.
It's good to see everybody.
There you go.
So how's everybody doing?
It's the same day it's always been. Tomorrow I'll let you know about tomorrow, and after that I'll let you know about the day after that. You got to roll with the punches. People say, are we worried about the future? It's kind of hard to get worried about something that you never had an opportunity at in the first place. We're coming here to my uncle's high school and seeing if we can pick up food for everybody. Pork. You like her mask?
Yeah, it's so pretty. Thank you.
Just worried about today and tomorrow and being able to just do the basic stuff. We live day by day.
It's been difficult because of the pandemic. I don't know what's gonna happen. And I feel like I'm way off course. I wanna graduate. Hopefully I get to do that someday. But the way things are going right now, it's not looking so good. I don't know if I'll ever be able to move out from my parents' home, I'll just never move out. Yeah. Are you okay with that? I just feel sad about it. I feel sad that I can't even help. Yeah. Because I need help. It'll work out.
I know, baby. I know. My poor cats are so confused. Right now I'm going to stay with a friend because we had a pipe backup in my house. They literally have to rip out a bunch of walls. My roommate is letting me borrow the truck. When you're in my financial situation, you can't afford to have any emergencies at all. I am fortunate that I have people helping me out and I have a place to stay with my cats. I grew up in a very unsteady financial home, and every time we ended up moving, we'd lose something emotional. I used to have my mom's ID, which was my only picture of her. And I can't find that anymore. So I kind of tend to associate moving with losing things that are important to me. I'm kind of pushing that feeling to one side and doing my best to move forward. Hey, baby, what do you look? What do you think?
CEO Bob Iger announced this week he would forego his entire salary because of the crisis.
Early on, Bob Iger and top executives made a big show of giving up their salaries. But it was just a matter of months before the Disney board would quietly restore them fully.
Look at the $3 million that Bob Iger gave back for his salary. My first thought was, but what about his stock options? What about all those other things? We all know that that's not where the majority of his money comes from. They were never at risk of losing their homes.
Dow Jones Industrial Average soared 358 points.
It was the best August for the Dow since 1984.
In fact, as workers were struggling, the 1% was better off than it had ever been. In 2020, as the pandemic raged, sales of super yachts were up 46%. When did this become normal? What happened to the way my grandfather did business? He died in 1971, and within a decade, the country's personality had completely changed.
It didn't just change magically. It changed because powerful people changed those norms and changed those values and put aside the values that had operated for decades and decades in this country. I use the word confederacy a lot, but all of these people, corporate CEOs, intellectual zealots, just plain rich people, they worked together during the 70s and 80s to change this system and this culture into one that really is about serving the rich guys and the business guys.
In 1971, business leaders at the Chamber of Commerce asked Virginia tobacco lawyer and future Supreme Court Justice Lewis Powell to come up with a plan to put business firmly in the driver's seat.
They began this campaign to change minds. Government is not only not the answer, government is bad. Government is incompetent, government is corrupt, government can't do anything, get out of the way, let business in Wall Street do everything. All that matters is profit.
They created a roadmap for an ideological takeover of American life, from how business should organize and lobby and contribute to politicians, to how they need to go into the universities to make sure that young people were understanding the dangers of labor unions and government regulation.
We got to set up these think tanks, we got to create some media, and this super free market, profits are all that matter idea was sold to the American people.
In any event, I'm not in favor of fairness. I'm in favor of freedom. And freedom is not fairness.
Milton Friedman was a celebrity economist arguing corporations have no responsibility whatsoever beyond profits, full stop, end of story.
Milton Friedman said, a corporation is a machine for making money for investors. And maximizing shareholder value would make everyone rich and free. You don't have to worry about anything else. All you have to do is put your head down and make money.
Did you ever have a moment of doubt whether greed's a good idea to run on?
Well, first of all, tell me, is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests.
Milton Friedman thought greed is good, and that's what makes America great. And of course, that idea is a mischaracterization of our economic system for more than a century. They just rewrote the story.
And suddenly, that story was everywhere, even on morning television. What made it so easy for Americans to imagine that the free market would serve their interests any better than the government had?
On the one hand, out front is the free market story, and on the side is the dog whistle.
In Chicago, they found a woman who holds the record. She used 80 names, 30 addresses to collect food stamps, Social Security, as well as welfare.
I've always felt the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Reagan was able to win large majorities of working and middle-class white people by campaigning against government itself. The emotional logic was government is on the side of these lazy black people who don't want to work. You are better than that. You are one of us. You too can be rich. And he marketed it extremely well.
My friends, thank you again for the gift of this magnificent parade. Tomorrow evening, I will address the nation about a dramatic proposal to reform our tax system, to launch a new American revolution, and expand our economic freedom.
It became known as trickle-down economics. If the rich get richer, then that'll help everybody.
Of course, the result was a set of policy changes, slashing tax rates on millionaires and corporations, gutting social spending that really helped working class families, and then, of course, attacking unions. It really signaled the end of the reign of organized labor in the country as a way for millions of workers to demand an equal slice of the pie they spent all day baking.
The changes that came with this free market ideology were reflected inside of Disney after my father helped bring in a new CEO, and corporate priorities drastically changed.
Management wants the workers to give up some of what they already have, asking a 3-year wage freeze and some cuts in benefits.
Workers say they cannot accept a 2-year wage freeze, and they say they cannot understand the company's attitude towards its employees.
The morale has been really down, and I honestly can say I don't think it'll ever be the same out there.
Disneyland will open this morning as usual, with or without its union employees.
They discovered they didn't have to spend so much money on people that they no longer appreciated anyway. I was appalled at what they were telling me. And I just thought, well, this isn't the company I knew.
It was part and parcel of this treating workers and employees more and more like cogs, like something less than people. Around the same time, the average CEO went from being paid 60 times average worker to 100, to 200, to 300, to 600 times in some cases. And that's just because it was decided that they could get away with it.
The they, in this case, was Wall Street, where a lot of things were suddenly possible on what would become the proving ground for the free market ideology.
You know, I think of it as the assholification of America.
Totally. A word yes, indeed. It is the assholification of America.
This is a great view from up here.
You bet it was a great view from up there. And for the next 4 decades, Wall Street and corporate America would spend billions lobbying to dismantle almost every law and regulation keeping them in check, stacking the deck further and further against Main Street. Rather than trickle down, money has flowed relentlessly up to people like me.
Well, you know, trickling down always to me sounded like urine, right? So, I mean, that's what trickles, right? In our
Yeah, exactly. Do you know that there was a version of trickle-down economics in the 1890s that was described as the horse and sparrow theory? If the horse eats enough oats, they make their way through the horse, and the sparrow gets them.
And yet, that trickle-down story just will not die, no matter how much it stinks.
Big announcement from Disney, and not a good one for Disney employees. Today, Disney announced that it will be laying off about 28,000 domestic employees.
Dear cast member,
COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant impact on our businesses. We have made the very difficult decision to reduce our workforce.
Makes me scared. Knowing that many people lost their jobs now, I might end up losing mine somewhere down the line, and I don't want to lose it.
Just an ice cream guy. Glad the kids aren't here. See, I'm gonna make you smile. Took me a second. You know, been through rough times before. This is just a different format. Don't worry about it. I got this. I got this.
We just laugh.
When I say the words "I got this," it means I ain't got a clue what I'm gonna do, but I gotta think of something fast because this shit is sinking. It's like the Titanic, and another like icebergs are ganging up, and they're like attacking the boat now.
The color of the day is green on Wall Street. All three major indices closed at record high levels as stocks continued their...
No matter how bad things got for workers, Wall Street continued to ride high.
Disney could not have written a better comeback story. The stock back at all-time highs.
Disney Plus up big over the Christmas holiday.
Fans rejoiced over upcoming Star Wars and Marvel movies, and stockholders celebrated too. Well, most of them. Abigail Disney had a different reaction. Her take was that share prices were divorced from what was happening to the company's workers, and she called that a complete moral breakdown of this entire system.
I don't believe the company and the magic can survive this kind of corporate behavior.
And I think you see this more broadly, not as a Disney problem, emblematic of a problem in boardrooms and corporate cultures across this country.
I'm saying, just it's time to do it differently, and I don't care what the business school says. There's a certain level below which you cannot go in the name of human decency.
You guys are ready to move up? You guys good? Merry Christmas and stay safe, all right?
Merry Christmas, thank you.
Okay. Have a Merry Christmas now.
The brother just told me that there are over 300 people in this line, and I believe it. The line pretty much wraps around this entire neighborhood. All of us need this help.
All right, here you go. This time we got
I hear you've been real good boys.
Really?
That's what I heard.
You're on the nice list, aren't you?
You're on the nice list? Yeah?
Remember the PS5 and the Switch?
Ho, ho, ho.
I just read an article about Bob Iger. He literally became a billionaire right before the holidays. So he got a wonderful Christmas present while everybody else was being handed pink slips. That doesn't make sense.
When we have a pandemic, as we've had, where almost 60 new billionaires were minted, where the billionaire class increased their wealth by almost 50%, while tens of millions of people went without. This inequality economy is one that honestly looks a lot more like the Gilded Age and the plantation economy than the one that we associate with the American dream.
Well, the happiest place on earth is giving people a big reason to smile today. Disneyland is back open after being shut down for more than a year.
For the city of Anaheim this morning, reopening, it's a big step toward economic recovery. For the fans, it's just a day of excitement.
As the park reopened, Ellie, Artemis, Ralph, and Trina were all called back to work.
Shoulder to shoulder, against corporate greed.
But many cast members were not brought back.
A bunch of my crew is still laid off. There's still so many messed up things happening.
Shoulder to shoulder, against corporate greed. Shoulder to shoulder for respect and dignity. How much are those little ears, the Mickey Mouse ears? $30. And how much are Disney workers making? 15 bucks. How about somebody with 20?
Our workload has increased. Our wages are the same. It's just a never-ending fight.
Gotta get our guys back working.
I don't have love for the company anymore.
Hi everyone, I'm a Disney cast member. I'm a custodian. I really wanted to quote Walt Disney for you guys right now. You can design and create and build the most wonderful place in the world, but it takes people to make the dream a reality.
Thank you. Well said, Ellie.
Okay, gracias. Thank you for coming out. After my time with the union, I've come to really appreciate the work that they do.
I hear you're going back to college. So what are you going to study?
Labor studies.
That makes me really happy to hear you say that. I mean, it makes me really happy to imagine you doing that. I can't tell you.
I have this new passion growing within me now with working alongside unions and building power for working class people like me.
Meanwhile, after months of searching and saving, Artemis was able to find a place within her price range.
Before I was only living like a 10-15 minute drive from work, but now it takes about 2 hours. If I ride the bus, yeah.
Feels good in here. It's light.
Yeah.
You have lights.
Yes.
And you have Keanu, which, you know,
he's
no
very
one should
beautiful. He keeps me company.
So when did you start back at Disney, and how are you feeling about that now?
When I first got back, like, it was really nice to just be working, but I've been getting more and more frustrated the last couple of months just thinking about this job that was supposed to pay my bills while I focused on the things that are supposed to be what life is about the things that make me joy. You know, I haven't focused on any of those things because I've been so focused on the fact that I couldn't survive on this job.
You got a second job?
Yes. I got a job at a school district working as a sub-custodian. It's kind of a foot in the door to potentially become full-time at a school district.
So you're laying the groundwork to leave?
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah. So is that something that you've been thinking about for a long time?
It's something I probably should have been thinking about for a long time. I had a 5-year plan when I went into Disney to be done with college and on to the next thing. And that didn't work out. It's 9 years later now. And it's just been frustrating because I was brought up with the idea that I'm healthy, I'm intelligent. If I put in the work, I'm gonna be okay and I'm gonna be able to make money and take care of myself. But I don't think that it's as true as a lot of people say.
Far and wide, the reputation of Disneyland stands out primarily for the courtesy and the cleanliness and friendliness of the place. I've always said in my end of the work, that it takes people to run a business. You people have been the heart and the running soul of this business, and we appreciate it no end. And we say congratulations to you for doing the grand job that you have done. Thank you.
Humans are meaning-making creatures. The idea of the economy was to give us the resources we needed so that then we could tell the stories and build the relationships and have the meaning that we needed. We've let the search for daily bread and for things completely overwhelm what our ancestors called our souls.
It's really good to see you guys. It's been a hell of a long time, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a year and something, but it feels so much longer than that.
It feels like 5 to 10 years.
Well, you look like Father Time now, so that works.
I feel more comfortable this way.
So, Ralph, rumor has it you're not going back.
No.
Tomorrow is his official last day at the company.
It's not an easy decision. I mean, it's more like moving on to a different and new chapter that'll be hopefully more beneficial for our family overall, and leaving a chapter behind that really I'd like to forget I read.
So why?
I mean, there were some highlights, but
Tell me why you're leaving.
right now I'm getting at that age. It's wearing on me. It's a lot of physical work that we were doing for not a lot of financial reward, and that's taken its toll.
So what's next? What are your options?
See where life takes us.
Happy birthday, baby. Love you, Daddy.
Because I know you get everything good when this happens. You get cake. Yes. Oh, this can't be for me. That's much too old.
Happy birthday.
Yes.
Surprise. All right, here we go. We're all gonna try to block the wind. Birthday, dear Daddy. Happy birthday to you.
Okay.
If you could tell Disney anything, what would you tell them?
We'd like to be able to have a home.
Got a little help there, huh?
Who wants one first?
I want cake.
Is that good cake?
Come back.
1, 2, go, Daddy, get him!
Woo! That was tough, Mom. Let's go.
Dear Bobs, yeah, this is for both of you, Bob Iger and Disney's new CEO, Bob Chapek. You didn't seem to understand my email, so I made this film. This is for you and for all the Toms, Dicks, Harrys, and Marys running Wall Street and corporate America. Because this isn't just a Disney story. It's the story of nearly half of American full-time workers who can't make ends meet. These problems are the result of a complicated system that constrains us all. It may not be our fault, but it is our responsibility. And you and I both know that with imagination and courage, it can be changed. Maybe I sound a little too Disney, but trust me, I'm not alone. To be continued.
As I walk through this wicked world, searching for light in the darkness of insanity, I ask myself, is all hope lost? Is there only pain and hatred and misery? Oh, each time I feel like this inside, there's one thing I wanna know. Oh, what's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? Oh, tell me what's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? Sometimes. So where are the strong and who are the trusted? And where is the harmony, sweet harmony? 'Cause each time